I'm surprised Jahan didn't grab on a little bit more in Washington. I called a couple of his college football games, and he was such a good route runner, so sudden, in and out of cuts, being able to go deep. His hands were so strong, being able to make some contested catches, a guy that was really good down in the red zone. But now he doesn't have to be that number 2 option. I mean, he really gets to be with A.J. Devontae and Dallas Goedert. If Dotson just replicates what he did at that number 3 wide receiver spot, I don't know of anybody in the NFC that can line up and play man-to-man coverage against those 4 pass catchers.
That was Dan Orlovsky, as it's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan. And, of course, it's powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. You can get on all podcasting platforms. And don't forget to search their YouTube channel, Inside the Birds, as they get ready for a big football season with the Eagles. They got one more preseason game tomorrow. We'll get into that. But you heard what Dan Orlovsky said about Dotson coming here now. So let's go inside this Dotson trade a little deeper, Adam Caplan. We'll get your thoughts on the deal, on why the Eagles decided to give up a third-rounder to go get a third wide receiver.
Yeah, and I know that they had 2 third-rounders, but the point is they gave a third-rounder, as you said, Mike. So, look, I don't know why it's so hard for people to understand this. We noticed in social media, Jeff and I, Mosher and I, put a lot of information out for Patreon, really interesting high-level information, intel on what both teams were thinking. But you just got to understand something, Mike. It's one thing to look at a depth chart or the unofficial depth chart that clubs send you, but it's another thing to actually be there in training camp. I remember the first couple of days that I went to Eagles training camp, I'm like, who in the world is going to be their third? If Paris Campbell doesn't win it, they don't have anyone on the roster. And Paris Campbell, he got hurt. He got benched, as we reported back in March. The Giants benched him for performance based on practice. So I wasn't sold on Paris Campbell. It was worth a shot. They liked the player in 2019 for the draft. He's failed to impress. So my thinking was, Mike, and we've known this behind the scenes, there were other players who were looking at other than Dotson, but they had to do something. And people will say, I put this out on Twitter or X yesterday, that they're in dire straits at number 3 receiver. This is not me telling you this, guys. They gave up a third-round pick for a receiver. They're telling you that they didn't trust who they had. They gave you the answers. It's not me. It's them telling you this. I don't know why, Mike, people couldn't understand this. Any reporter who's at practice knew this was a major problem. Not a problem, a major issue. As a NFL team needs a third receiver, you need, A, because when you go 11 personnel, you need a third, and B, if one of your 2 starters gets hurt, you need somebody else. They didn't have that guy. They're not depending on Paris Campbell. Smartly enough, Howie Roseman did a smart thing here. We'll get into Washington side talking to them, but the Eagles had to do something, Mike. This was by far the biggest issue for the football team. Inside backer, they got a lot of them, but they're not good enough there. But they have enough guys. The Eagles did not have a third or even a fourth receiver. We don't know who the 4 will be right now. Right now, probably going to be Johnny Wilson, but it's not a lock.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the receiver room now look like? Okay, you got your 3, but you still have quite, if Smith or Brown got hurt, now what?
All right, so let's break it down from the Eagles' standpoint. Dotson definitely will be Devontae Smith's backup. Dotson, I'm told, is a Z receiver, not an X. He's not physical enough to play that X position. That's really where you're not moving. You generally line up on one side. You're not in motion much. Where Smith will be moved a lot for matchup purposes. Dotson's not the most physical guy. He could run, though. So Dotson's clearly the 3. Right now, they got to figure out, is Paris Campbell going to be on the football team, and B, is he going to be A.J. Brown's backup? Will it be Johnny Wilson, who now has a concussion? Wilson was, I would say, slightly ahead of schedule before his injury, but you don't know how many snaps he could handle. And this is what I've learned many years ago, Mike, with coaches. They tell you, as many have said to me, what's our answer if our starter gets hurt? Well, the Eagles were not happy with their answer for a backup for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. That's why they decided to give up significant compensation. Giving up a third-round pick is a lot for a backup player. But I want to add one more thing. Your number 3 receiver typically is a guy who might catch 30 to 40 passes, or just when you go 3 wide, okay, that's what you're going to do. But let's understand something with Kellen Moore's offense, Mike. If Kellen Moore, as one of his former coaches with the Cowboys told me about a week and a half ago when I ran into one on my training camp tour, Kellen's base offense is 11 personnel. That's what he wants. He could not run his offense efficiently without that guy. Now, Britton Covey did a really good job. He's also very small. He's been a great story, Mike, of development as a slot receiver only. Dotson could play inside or outside. They had to do something, Mike, to move this forward here. They didn't have a choice. They had to do it. This was obvious they were going to do something. There was no one on the street that they were looking at that was ready to go. They could have waited to see if someone's cut who they liked. But typically when guys are cut, Mike, there's some kind of an issue. But we'll get to Washington's problems with Dotson in a minute, or why they wanted to move him. But this is a smart move for Howie. Yeah, you'd rather not give up a third-round pick, but, Mike, if you think you're a good playoff team or being a playoff team, you can't go with what you had, and they didn't. They knew this.
All right, Adam Caplan, football at 4. So, as you've hinted at, why did Washington make this deal? This is a first-round pick, 16th overall. Why are they willing to give up on it?
All right, so, Mike, for those of us who cover the league from a national standpoint, who have good sources with Washington, I could just tell, like, based on just conversations with people, close the situation, based on the way that Dotson played last season. And remember, Adam Peters, the new GM, inherited this player. He didn't draft him. So it's kind of like with Omar Khan, the GM of the Steelers. He didn't draft Kenny Pickett. Kevin Colbert, his last draft, he drafted Kenny Pickett. He had no allegiance to Pickett. So after they saw Pickett play last season, Pittsburgh felt that they were not going to go any farther with Pickett. And after what Dotson did, not only last season, I'm told, was also practice-related in their off-season program and obviously in training camp. As one other team told me, they were absolutely motivated to move him. They clearly didn't want him. And it's also curious, why in the world would you try to help a team that you're competing with? We could also argue, how good is Washington going to be? We know the Eagles are way better than them, at least on paper, should be. But why would you do that? And it's fair game to bring it up. That's not a good sign. But I know Washington did not want the player, Mike. I'm going to leave it at that. We have way more information for Patreon, and also in we did a sort of emergency half an hour special show for them. We also will cover it more on our Monday morning show, when we drop our final 53. But it's fair to question it, Mike, on Dotson. But the guy's a good football player. He, as one person said, he probably needed to change the scenery. He was not wanted there. He's not a bad guy off the field, by the way. I want to make that clear. Mm-hmm. His performance was just not good enough. I knew this when I was there in August. It was my first camp tour site other than Eagles when I got on the road. I could tell that, it's funny, when you hear Olamide Zaccheaus is doing better than Dotson, I'm like, okay, really?
Jeez.
And apparently he's been a story for camp for them, and they didn't want Dotson. I'll leave it at that.
Well, it's as you heard Orlovsky said, he saw him in college, and look, he was the 16th pick, good route runner, strong hands. He's had drop problems, and that's been something for him. So we'll see if the change of scenery helps out Dotson as the number 3 wide receiver. He won't be in tomorrow's game, but what are some of the things to look for Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock, Eagles-Vikings?
Yeah, such an odd time, and the weather's going to be great, by the way, if you're going to the link. So between Kenny Pickett, and we know Tanner McKee could do it. And look, they got to be able to protect Pickett. I'm not going to put all the blame on him for what's happened in the preseason with the taking too many hits, sacks, and so forth, and pressure. But I want to see them throw the ball downfield much more, Mike. And I know it's preseason, but still, it's their last chance to do it. One of the things that stood out to me in training camp, which is just baffling, because I know Kellen Moore's scheme very well, and talking to coaches who work with him. He attacks all parts of the field. He wants to be a vertical pass caller. He sure was he wanted to be with the Chargers, but he lost a lot of players at the receiver position. But at his heart, he wants to throw the ball downfield. We didn't see a lot of that. Now, for whatever reason, I want to see that in this game. I know it's preseason, but again, it's a real football. This is actually not practice. This is an actual game. I want to see them call some stuff downfield. Now, we know that Wilson's got the concussion. John Ross has a concussion. Whether it's Joseph Ngata, Austin Watkins, Jacob Harris, just could you throw it past 10 yards and protect? They got to protect better, Mike. And that was disappointing that they could not protect a little better. So we're hopeful that'll be better. So that's one thing. I like to see them expand the pass game more. Also, the backup group of offensive linemen. We know Keegan's got an injury. Matt Hennessy's got an injury. Stevens got an injury. He's going to back up Becton. Brett Toth needs snaps. Max Sharping is probably a long shot. Here's one that just came up the last week. I would have not even remotely considered Nick Gates being on the team, Mike, but because of injury, he's got some reps with the ones, certainly with the twos. This guy's got center, guard positional versatility, though I am told that he clearly is better off at guard than center, but nevertheless, this guy's a veteran. I want to see him get snaps. Dylan McMahon, who's very small, but guy was drafted. Let's try to settle on some of these roles here. We know Fred Johnson will be the backup left tackle. Kadarius Kennard secure a spot. So let's see these guys play well and see how they line up.
Flip over to the defensive side of the ball. I would assume, you gave a bunch of stuff on offense. Is the defense more settled, actually?
This is a good question, Mike. This inside backer job, now, if they surprise us and play the starters, I don't see it. But look, if they did, because remember that a lot of the defensive starters have played in the first 2 games. So if they do that and play the inside backers, let's see them settle. Look, we know Bond is still technically ahead of Dean, and that theoretically that'll be at least week 1. But let's put them in advantageous situations.
Do you subscribe? John McMullen thinks it's a conspiracy theory that as soon as the media gets shut out of practice, they're going to make that switch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
John said that. I saw him. He and I chatted last week, but we didn't talk about that.
Yeah, he thinks as soon as the media is shut out, they'll switch Dean and Bond at the linebacker spot.
I'm surprised. I've never heard of a team doing that. Not quite like that's been set up, but it is odd. He's not taking a T.J. Edwards type of jump over the last 2.5 weeks. Ever since that practice at the link where he struggled, I'm gonna, you and I talked about this when it happened.
Yep.
Something happened. Maybe he watched the tape and he goes, "Oh my, what is wrong? What am I doing here?" Ever since then, he's been their best inside backer. I bet the house. Okay, I bet the house he'll eventually wind up taking the job from Bond. I can't tell you when that's going to happen. But Trotter flashed. He's the most instinctive linebacker they have at the inside backer of the inside linebacker group. He's smaller. I get it. He's not a great athlete. So we'd like to see them kind of settle on a rotation here. But also the backup group. The other one is 57 Van Sumeren, who is they're probably the fastest linebacker. This guy, someday, Mike, might wind up being a starter. Look, it's a long shot, but we know that tape against the Giants last year was intriguing. This is a great find for the Eagles. You got to give their scouting staff, whoever has that area, that's a great job of scouting. Now, is he a lock to make the roster? No, but I think he's a pretty good bet to do it. We'll put our 53 out on Monday. He's another guy that, look, let's see what he's got here. And Burks, by the way, just came back. Now, I don't know that he'll play because he just came back to practice this week, but, Mike, as we get through this and finish this off, they really need to settle on this thing. It's just not I know it's not the greatest group overall, and they all have some sort of issue, but I'd like them to settle on something that they could get enough out of.
All right, last one would be Cooper DeJean, and he's back, and does he have a role, and will we see him tomorrow?
I don't know why he wouldn't play. He started doing more this week. And it's not just this game, Mike. I don't know that they know what they're going to do. We know he's not playing safety. He confirmed that. We get it. They want him to be a corner. Well, I'm sorry. They want him. I got to speak like Fangio here. They want to be a nickel. But I would tell you, Mike, and I know I know Vic won't call it a safety, but he's played inside backer. How do I know that? Because in big nickel, you could call it whatever you want to call it. I put this in my notes. They had Maddox and DeJean as jack linebackers. That's a coaching term. One was the jack and one was the other position, whatever they want to call it. That was an interesting formation. I think Vic would probably call it big nickel. But DeJean was in the box as a linebacker, and he's a superior athlete. I'm very curious, Mike, the way this is to me the most intriguing issue. For me, I can't speak for Mosher, but fans should be, because this kid is a baller. I know he's had some injuries, but he could be a difference maker. I just don't know exactly what they're going to do with him other than not playing him at safety. Is he going to be a nickel? Is he going to be a nickel roving player? Are you going to use him as a slot corner? How are you going to use him, Mike? I mean, we don't know that yet. I'm very intrigued.
All right, we'll all see it tomorrow, maybe for the first time. Cooper DeJean and the Eagles make their final preseason appearance. It's 1 o'clock right here on 97. Now, who's going to that game tomorrow instead of going to the beach for the last time?
I'm sorry?
Who's going to the Eagles game tomorrow over going to the beach down the shore for the last time?
Yeah, I know. I get it. I mean, plus, I guess 1 o'clock. Well, you can go in the morning, of course, and then just drive to, just drive. But
jeez. All right. Well, Adam, have fun. Are you going to the game tomorrow? You covering the game?
No. I tape it. There's just no reason to because we get our information the way we get it. But I'm a junkie though. I will watch every play and go over it and write notes. It's just it's kind of the way I am.
I'll have it on. I'm just I'm not going. That's all. But if anybody's going, enjoy it. If not, you can listen to it right here on 97.3. All right, Adam. We'll talk to you Tuesday, pal.
You got it too.
Adam's back on Tuesday for football at 4.